Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. Today's guest is Ric Ptak. Now, Ric has been a guest on the show many, many times, and we just finished doing the Foreman Supervisor 101 training. Kind of an interesting one this time because we had a class from Australia, and we also had a class in North America. And to make it even more interesting, the class in North America had a company from South America in it, just because the show is global, which is great. Anyways, want to get a summary from Ric on what he learned, what he observed, what he heard from you, the students, in the Foreman 101 training, which again is made up all of other cabinet shops. The topic of today's talk is help. Why are my guys wasting time? And so if you think that your guys are wasting time when you walk through the shop or when you're looking at the operations, we have some insights for you. And I want to get Ric to talk us through that so you can start to make some changes in the company. All right, that's it for the intro. I'll see you on the other side. Is this the Ric Ptak show where I'm a guest, or is this the Cabinet Maker Profit System show where Ric's a guest?
I don't know, Dom. It seems like you've got me on here a few times lately, so I'm quite humbled to realize and you know admit that you find what I have of value. So that's good. I'm glad that
Yeah.
I can provide some value to the folks out there and your listeners. So
Well,
good
I
stuff.
mean, obviously, Ric, we love having you on the show. You're our resident foreman expert. You're our lean manufacturing or continuous improvement expert. You're our I'll say this, our grizzled cabinetry veteran. You've got the beard and you've got the years of experience. Yeah.
Right, right.
Hey, for the people who haven't heard you before, because we're always getting new listeners, Mr. Ric Ptak, who the heck are you? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these cabinet shop business owners all around the world?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dom. So the journey of Ric Ptak began, about 40 years ago. Worked in a woodworking shop. Asked if I could be an apprentice. They said yes. So I apprenticed as a woodworker, cabinet maker, and just worked my way up to journeyman. And then later on, then they asked me, "Hey, do you want to be the foreman?" I said, "Sure,"
Sounds like
but
fun.
didn't have a clue about what does that mean, foreman. And then you have to deal with all these people problems and scheduling issues and clients. And
Yeah.
so, I learned by the school of hard knocks. Later on became a plant manager and then engineering department project manager. So I've been around the block in the woodworking industry as far as, doing all the things and wearing all the hats, and then sort of got off of the tools and latched onto a company that did more coaching, consulting, training with the woodworking industry. So
Mm.
that's where I picked up a lot of and was able to hone and polish a lot of my abilities to train folks and do plant layouts and get some lean expertise and some lean training. So I'm a black belt in train the trainer for lean initiatives,
Right.
continuous improvement. So yeah, that's, so I've got the experience and I've got also the willingness to want to help folks to become better and
The
drive out
intent.
waste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have to have the intent.
Yeah.
You and I actually met. I'm sure you remember, but you were the president of an architectural millwork regional association, and you had me as a speaker. And then,
Correct.
yeah, that was a long time ago. And then we sort of hit it off. And gee,
Yeah.
now you run the foreman training here for the Cabinet Maker Profit System community. You do. You just mentioned shop layouts. You're doing at least one that I can think of, if not two,
Well, there's
actively.
two. There's two actually I'm doing, and
Yeah.
potentially a third one. So we'll see. I mean, folks are wanting to improve the flow and optimize things and drive out the waste, and at the same time, have their folks do things better, easier, but not work hard.
Yeah.
But they'll be efficient.
Well,
That's what it's all about.
so much depth here, and I'm glad you're here, bringing your technical expertise on the floor and also your IP, the intellectual property you've gained from
Mm.
teaching people this. We just finished the foreman training, foreman 101 training, which we run all the time. This year we were able to run an Australia
Mhm.
class and a North American class, and we just wrapped it up. So I thought today we would have kind of a debrief on that, but you and I put together a topic for today, which is help. why are my guys wasting time? Which I think probably captures the frustration that
Mm-hmm.
the owners might feel as they walk on the floor and see things
Yeah.
not happening.
Well, there's the whole perception about wasting time, whatever people think in their mind what that means now. But once you start to look a little deeper and understand, what value added versus non-value added activities are, you see there are a lot more wastes even that you may not have realized were existing.
So can we just back up for a second? Can you describe or define value added? Because now you and I are into the business coach talk. We've got value added activities and we have non. What does that mean when we look at a real shop?
Yeah. So a value added activity is anything that changes the form, fit, or function of something you're manufacturing or even a service you're providing. So for instance, you've got a top, a solid, let's say you have a solid oak top.
Sure.
And you want to sand it and you want to put an edge on it. So when the top is actually in the sander and the belt sander is hitting it, that's value added activity. It's being sanded. Mm-hmm. Same as when you take the top and you're feeding it through the shaper and the shaper knives are contacting the wood and cutting the profile on, that's value add activity. What is not value added activity would be things like feeding, unloading, stacking, moving, waiting, loading the truck.
Right.
Those are non-value added activities. They don't change the form, fit, or function, and the customer is not willing to pay for them.
Right.
You have to pay, the owners have to pay their people to do it, but you cannot bill any extra for it. So if it's necessary, for instance, loading the truck, we understand that is necessary because in order to load it, then we can deliver it. And the customer's probably willing to pay for the delivery of it. And so, and because it gets there and then the installers can install it, which they're also willing to pay for. But loading the truck is non-value added if we stick to the definition. And so we better do it effectively and efficiently. It's necessary, but it's non-value added. Some of the unnecessary non-value added activities that I mentioned earlier would be things like waiting, stacking, moving, moving it from point A to point B, let's say 60 meters, when you could actually move things closer and only move it 5 meters or 2 meters, which would be much better because now it's less walking. So again, decrease the non-value added activities if you can't eliminate. And that's what the foreman training 1 week we've spent on that, where we asked folks to capture videos of something that they are doing in their shop. And if it was a bottleneck, or they felt it was a bottleneck operation, capture that. If not, then just give me something where something is being produced.
Sure.
I watch the video and then we talk about giving recommendations and we talk about identifying waste and look at the amount of steps it takes. So in this one particular example, shops that was sent me something and they were assembling doors, like they staged the door, the frame, the casing, the weather stripping, all those things. They had it, the hinges, they had to screw the hinges on and mount the door and all that. That was all staged, but yet there was still some walking by individuals away from the work center to go get something, retrieve something, and bring it back to.
And this is the video that somebody in the Foreman 101 training, part of the training is people send you a video of various stages of manufacture or processing.
Correct.
And so you're watching a video of a shop assembling completed pieces.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. So sorry to cut you off. I wanted to clarify that though. So what did you see in the video?
So what I saw in the video there was the additional steps that were being taken. I said, why couldn't things be moved closer? The ideal for me is always something should be 3 steps away, no more.
Okay.
If I'm walking more than 3 steps, then it's too far away. I have to look at the opportunity that I can pull it closer.
Right.
Because remember, if I'm walking to get something and walk back, again, non-value added activity.
Okay.
Customer's not willing to pay for it. We're not changing the form, fit, or function of anything. We're just retrieving things. Material handling, could be tools, whatever it is we're getting. But the boss has to pay the workers to do that, but yet he can't on his invoice or her invoice, can't send it to the customer and say, we had 60 additional steps too many in this 13 minutes we were working on your product. So I'm going to bill you for those 60 steps.
Sorry,
right?
let me ask, how did you break down 60 steps and 13 minutes? Can we just define that better?
So in the video they sent me, it was 13 minutes long.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
When I watch the video, I look for things like, how many steps does somebody take to get something? And why are they walking there? And why are they walking all the way back? Like this is what I use, the sort
this
of
is your foreman expertise, right?
To understand where is the value and where is there non-value, because that's the waste, right? And we have to learn to identify the waste, right?
Okay.
So in this particular video, there was 60 steps taken too many in that 13-minute video. So then I said, okay, my golden rule of thumb is 1 step equals 1 second equals $1. So for every step that you don't need, that's costing you a second in time, production time, and it's costing you $1 in lost potential future sales or contribution to sales.
Contribution to sales, right? Yeah.
Because every employee is contributing to sales, right? Every day, every minute, whether they realize it or not. The boss realizes it, sure. So I said, okay, in 13 minutes, that's all I saw, because that was the length of video I'm asking for, about 15 minutes. But I said, in an hour, how many steps would have been taken? So I said, okay, I took 60 seconds divided by 13, and I find out there's 4.6 blocks of 13-minute segments in an hour. Okay. So now we're saying, okay, if we wasted $60 or we lost $60 in contribution to sales in that 13 minutes, then in an hour, we are going to miss out on $276.
Oh.
Then I said, okay, $276, what does that look like in a day? In a 7-hour day. Company works 8 hours. They have a half hour for lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. So they're really working 7 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm using the 7-hour figure for this calculation. And that's $1,932. So almost $2,000 a day.
A day. $2,000.
$2,000.
Just by counting the number of steps, or what at least what you were doing in this training.
Yeah.
Is you're helping the foreman understand.
That's what it's costing. Right?
Yeah.
So do I want the people to work harder? Walk faster. No, that's not the answer. Move things closer, right? And then I don't have to ask the employees to walk faster or harder, but things are closer, right? It's easier for them.
It's right there. Yeah.
So when we say, okay, $2,000 a day, and if you have, let's say you have 240 working days in a year for an employee, I mean, I'm taking out all the weekends, I'm taking out the stat holidays, I'm taking out 2 weeks of holiday.
Sure.
So there's about 240 working days. So if I say, okay, times that by $1,932, that is an incredible amount of money. Dom, you want to know how much that is?
Yeah, I was just about to do the notes, but if you have it already.
$463,680.
460 grand.
460 grand. So, if we look at that and say, okay, can we reduce those 60 steps, Rick, to down to 0? I said, no, let's just shoot for half. Instead of 60 extra steps, let's just say that individual only is taking 30 extra steps in that 13-minute video. Extrapolate that out. I'm taking a 50% reduction. So instead of 460 grand, it's 230 grand. That's the potential you have to make an improvement over the course of a year. If I move things closer and things are easier, right? So this is the potential.
That's crazy. And
when you talk about waste, there's the waste. We just reduced that waste in half.
Can I interrupt for a second? Because that's an amazing number, but a couple of observations. That's one station that you had a video of for 13 minutes. So there's obviously other stations that we didn't see. But also, if you said we could find 460 and then you kindly and very generously said, well, let's just say you could do half of that, 230 grand. There's somebody listening to this episode right now going, these guys are full of it. Okay, well, cut it in half again from, if you don't mind, Rick, let's be ridiculous here. Let's say you only got half of 230, which is around 115. Let me ask that person listening now who's like, can't work in our shop. Were you able to pull out an extra $115,000 from your shop last year? And by the way, that $115,000 translates into your kids' braces, that vacation your wife wanted to take, that new truck, towing a bigger boat to a prettier cottage on a nicer lake. So we're not talking about funny money here. When we train our leaders to help us bring our vision to life of what we want this company to look like a lean, mean operating machine, it comes down to the simple things at the coalface, like right there in the shop, cut down the number of steps.
Yeah. And, there's an added benefit to this too, right? Whatever percentage of that, if you say 50%, 25% would be the 115,000. Even if you want to take a smaller number to that, whatever the case may be, the added benefit though is, remember, we didn't think of the seconds yet. We also said 1 minute, 1 step equals 1 second. So now if we can move things closer, we're going to gain some of that time back, so that now we have a greater contribution to sales as well.
We can produce more.
And so the seconds work out to 3.2 weeks. You gain an extra 3.2 weeks if you compare it to 460,000. Now, if you take half, then it's a week and a half. If you take some portion of that, then it's 3 or 4 days. It's still, I'm gonna take that every day. You give me a 3-4 days extra, that's the amount of time sometimes on a rush job that you wish you had on a big job that wasn't going well. If I only had 4 extra days, I could get this thing finished, no real quality issues, and then I could satisfy the customer.
Yeah.
That's the 4 days.
Or that, yeah, you know what? You actually make me think of another guest that we're going to be having on here, Sebastian Demaray from Hollywood Woodwork. We're going to be talking about overtime, because overtime is this black box of calculation. It's not impossible to calculate for, but you don't put it in your bid when you're trying to come in tight.
No.
Right?
You're not calculating that at the front end when you bid the job, right? So,
yeah. Those are interesting numbers.
Listen, there's, why are my guys wasting time? I'll tell you why. In some cases, your guys are wasting time because you meaning management of the ownership, has set up the processes right from day one. When the first day I hired the guy, I'm teaching them the processes that have these wastes built in. Yeah, you have to walk over there to get. You got to walk over there an extra 30 steps to get this thing, right? Yeah. And then bring it back here and then do it. And then when you're done with it, you got to go bring it back. And so, we had the same thing with the truck loading thing where when things were getting loaded, and this is another video that I saw now.
Okay, about truck loading?
The truck loading. There was 6 minutes where the camera was sitting on a tripod. Nothing was happening. I didn't see anything go in the truck. I didn't see anything. There was nobody. But I watched it. It was painful. And yet, we're loading a truck.
It's more painful for the guy who sent you the video that's now listening to this. We won't share the names of who was in the class,
but then, things did get loaded, and then they went away again out of the picture, and then they came back with a box of straps, and then they walked away, and they needed to get something else, and then they brought back some shrink wrap. And then I made the suggestion to these folks that, look, make a dolly that's movable, that has all the things you need in there for loading the truck. So shrink wrap, padding, cardboard, blankets, straps,
a utility knife. Yeah.
Load the truck. Then when you're done, move it out of the way, park it where it needs to be for next time, or reload it for the next time. So, there's all kinds of little tips and tricks where you can cut out the waste. So if you say, why are my guys wasting time? Well, because the process that you have, that's the way it is right now. So look at your process and try to carve some of that stuff away. And that's what we were teaching the folks in the leadership foreman training supervisors. We said, try, understand to recognize that these things can be improved upon. Learn to put those special glasses on, to look for the waste, to identify waste, and to drive it out when you can, or reduce it when you can, because it's going to cost it. It's going to cost you less. You're going to save money, right? And time.
And time is money.
Yeah.
If you for people who aren't familiar with the foreman training, and by the way, I think you and I were talking earlier, we're not confirmed on it, but sometime in January, February, we're going to run another one. But
Right.
can you give me a high level overview of what does the foreman slash leadership training do, or what does it look like? Actually, tell me what it looks like. Like who's in the crowd, who's in the class, and then tell me what we cover if you don't mind.
So best practices, who should be at the class should be one
Right.
owner, and then the leaders, so that the foreman, the supervisors. If you have
Okay.
one or two or three, you can have up to three folks join. Each company can have up to three folks in there, right? So if you
Right.
got the owner and two supervisors, that's fine. We do record it, so sometimes owners, because they have so many other hats to wear, can't make it,
Right.
but they certainly watch the recordings. So if you have three of your guys there, I know one company from Australia did that, where they had three of their folks there, but they religiously watched the recording of what their folks did before the next session.
Mm.
6 weeks. Okay, so we do 1 hour per week. So it's a 6 week course. And then the course outline is, I could just run through it quickly. The weeks would
Oh,
be
sure.
week
Yeah.
one. Just look at what the overview of the course is and what are your expectations. Because remember, I'm the customer now. So they're the customer. I'm delivering to
Yeah.
them
Yeah.
a product or service. So what are your expectations from me? I want to make sure I'm going to address that. So I want to capture that in week one. Then we review it in 6 weeks at the end of the session to make sure we hit the nail on the head. And then we just talk about what is a leader. What are your expectations in your facility for you being a leader or supervisor or foreman? What are you in charge of? If you don't know because you don't have it documented, you just think you have it up here. What I call this up in the noggin is tribal knowledge.
Mm.
Knowledge is great, but if you disappear or have to not be there for a while, where is that knowledge? It's not documented. So get it on a document. What are the expectations? Here's my roles. This is what I'm expected to do.
Right.
So nail that. If that doesn't already exist, nail that on a document with your owner, leader, upper manager. Make sure you get that, right? And then we talk about how to communicate with yourself, with others. We talk about what standards currently are in your facility. What processes, what systems do you have in place? Then we get into dealing with people problems. We want a no blame culture. We want to talk about safety, addressing the safety. And safety not only is about keeping people safe, but it's also about keeping products safe, equipment safe, infrastructure, vehicles, all those things. Week 3, we talk about how to instruct, how to teach new employees, but also how to teach existing. This is where some companies fall down on this. They think, we only have to train new folks. Well, processes change. You get new pieces of equipment, and you get new types of products, and you have new types of customer. Then you better be training your existing employees too, because a lot of times the quality has to be met. So we have to train what level of quality, what to look for, right? We talk about how to build the quality into each process step, right? And then we talk about, then in week 4, we talk about continuous improvement. We talk about lean. What
That's
is
the
it?
lean. That's what we've been taught. That's where the videos come in, right?
That's only week 4, right? We talk about rework, because rework again is a non-value added. It's a waste
and frustrating activity. Yeah.
And rework is like, it's one of these things where we're all good at fixing it once it exists, but we're not so good at preventing it from happening in the future, right?
Yeah.
So that we talk about, what are you doing to determine what the root cause of the different types of rework you have? And then once you determine the root cause, what is it that you're going to change in your process or in your training or in how you set up your standard operating procedures, so that you will have less of that type of rework or that defect in the future, right?
I remember Rick meeting somebody and he goes, I think our company slogan should be, we do it right because we do it twice.
Yeah. Yeah. What's the other one? We have no time to do it right the first time. We have all kinds of time to do it right the second time.
Oh, right. That's a
and we don't spend time. I find most folks don't spend time to drive down what the root cause was. We throw all kinds of resources at fixing the rework and getting out to the customer, getting in the paint shop, or getting it to the installer. Now that because we're a little bit behind and pressure is there for the schedule, but then we don't stop and say, why did we have that rework? And how do we prevent it from happening or reduce it from happening in the future? And that's a key component of reducing waste.
I gotta interrupt on that. I think because you and I had a conversation, you and I talk a lot anyways, but we just had a conversation about a hire that I made that didn't work out. And when you said, why didn't it work out? Do you remember what my first answer was?
Well, I think you said, you knew that you deviated from your system for some reason. I don't know why you did it, but you said you at least recognize that you did deviate from it.
Yeah. And so my point to this is it comes down to the personal responsibility of us as owners. So I know the title of this is Help. Why are my guys wasting time? The reason that we named it that is to get you guys to listen, but it actually relies on you as the owner. Ultimately, this all comes back to you. And I don't want to put more pressure on your shoulders, but until we take personal responsibility for doing these things that you're talking about, Rick, like developing our leaders, taking waste seriously, making sure that we're, doing it right the first time so that we don't have to do it right the second time. It starts with us. And then when we recognize that, when we take the responsibility, we can take the actions to, mitigate, to make the changes. Sorry, I had to interrupt you there, but I'll let you get back to the agenda.
Yeah, but it's a good point you're making, because it's developing a system. Like if you don't have a system currently, you need to develop that system. And that could be developing your leaders to, delegate to them some of these responsibilities so they understand and they can report back to you. Yes, we had rework. We determined what the root cause was, and here's what we're going to do about it. Are you in agreement, or do you see something else that I'm not seeing? So you're just coming back and reporting back to the owner, but they're seeing that you're running with it, you're doing something with it, right? And so they have now this confidence level that says, hey, they understand and they're doing something different rather than just plugging the holes in the dike, but not really looking at a proactive solution for long-term benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like to prevent a defect, you have to be present for the birth of the defect too, right? So if you weren't there, then
you sound like a proud papa. I have to be present at the birth.
How am I gonna make improvements? So again, there's a whole study. There's a worksheet that we have. It's a tool, one of the tools of many that we give through that training for the foreman and the leader, and that's one of them that can help the supervisor to drive down to the level where, hey, now I know what happened. Now I know what
did I tell you that I think that tool, because people may remember that one of my clients bought one of my other clients. And so I was on a tour of the facility, and that tool that you're talking about, that piece of paper, was on the door of the paint shop. When we did a tour, they printed it off like they were living it.
Perfect.
They love it.
Right on.
Yeah.
Good. So that's good that you're giving me the feedback that actually this stuff is
that they're using it,
being used. Yeah, exactly. So really, what we're trying to do then is create leaders standard work. Things like, and again, I know I deviated too. So I think it was in week 4. So let me finish that first. Week 5, we talk about using 6S. Again, it's another lean tool to create lasting and sustainable standards. And that's really what it's about, creating the standards and having them sustained. We talk about job methods improvement, how to improve. We talk about walks of opportunity. Again, this is something where you go out with the intent to look for waste. You don't go out to see, are my guys all here? Is this project on time? I mean, you do those walks anyway, but this is a special walk where I'm just putting on a special set of lenses that will only look for waste, identify waste, understand where some of the money is leaking, profits are leaking away because we have these wastes, and then identifying what they are, write them down, and then go back and try to figure out what do we need to do to change in our process, what do we need to augment our training with so that we can get better at doing these. Some of the worst practices, how do I change them into best practices, right? And then we talk about the video capture. They need to send me that by week 5 or by the end of week 5 so that I have a chance to review it. And then in week 6, we do the video review.
Everybody, sorry, Rick. Everybody gets to everybody learns from everybody else's video review.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So we review everybody's video really quick. I said, this is what I saw. I might ask a few additional questions if there's something that because again, I'm seeing a video for 15 minutes. I don't know how your whole facility runs. So I might have some special questions. Why do you do it like this? Is there a reason why you're doing it this way? Okay, now I understand better. And then I asked the folks, I said, look, here's some opportunities I saw. Go back and watch the video and watch this, look at this and see if there's a way you can make an improvement on it. So I'm just offering suggestions.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody learns from everybody else. We have a quick discussion about shadow boards. We talk about KPIs, what you should be measuring or looking for to track production, And then we just have a wrap up. We look at week 1 expectations where they met, and then we wrap things up and have a take. We always do a takeaway from everybody at the end of every week, but at the week 6, we have sort of some big takeaways from the folks, what resonated with them. Because I think it's important that they communicate and they talk and they express, their thoughts and their ideas, sort of a self-reflection rather than me do all the talking. It works better if they do some of the sharing and, interacting. So we have a lot of that.
Let me ask, people might not be aware that, when you're listening and you're in Delaware or you're in Detroit or you're up in Vancouver listening to the show, you might not realize that people listen to the show all over the world. But we ran a training again this time for Australia, New Zealand. Mm-hmm. What was different about a wood shop in Australia versus a wood shop in North America?
No difference. Just as much waste is happening. Is happening in Australia as happening.
That's crazy. Yeah. It's because we're talking about the business of the wood shop business.
Yeah. So if you look at a company that really doesn't maybe understand lean, or they don't know what it is, or they did a little bit, they dabbled in it, but most of the time that's what the folks I'm getting, the firms I'm getting is that scenario where they know about lean, and yeah, they've tried a few things, but yeah, okay, it's there. But when we look at this again, non-value added activity versus value added activity, I look at the percentage and I said, in most cases, when I watched the video and I did a sort of a summary, 75% of the time is non-value added activities are happening to that process, and only 25% is value adding.
And this is across all of the videos.
It doesn't matter if I go to North America or Australia, and if one shop is doing custom cabinets for kitchens and another one is doing commercial institutional millwork, and another one might be doing exterior door frames and interior doors, and somebody else doing closets. It doesn't matter. That's what it kind of boils down to. And so when you talk about 25% of the time value is added, so when I'm gluing, when I'm stapling, when I'm sanding, when I'm spraying, should I get a faster spray equipment? Should I get a faster stapler? Should I get a faster sander? Should I get a faster shaper? Well, if that's in your game plan and you have the budget for that, certainly think about that. But you're only addressing 25% of the problem, whereas the bigger opportunity is the non-value added activities, the waiting, walking, the sorting, the stacking, the moving, the loading, the unloading. These are non-value added things. How do we do it faster, better? And if I can eliminate them. Like inspections are really bad. Here's another example of one other video. There was inspections happening. So when they were loading the truck, then they inspected the cabinets again and the doors and the shelves before they loaded it. And I said, is that necessary? If the person who was finishing the product, this is where we build quality into the process step.
Right.
If it's of the quality that is required by the customer, and they simply deliver it to the loading dock, then I do not need another inspection happen, because again, an inspection is a non-value added activity, right?
Yeah, I suppose.
So I do away with that inspection, then do away with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the common mistakes I hear about is something went out the wrong size. So we need, and if that happens in your shop, you need to go and figure out why that's happening. It's not that it was cut the wrong size. For some reason above that in the process, the report came down to cut it the wrong size. Sure, maybe somebody made a mistake at the machine, but we have to figure out where that started.
Yeah, by that, and that's the 5 why worksheet that I send out.
Yeah.
Ask why 5 times. Why was it cut the wrong size? Well, that was the size that was on the drawing. Okay, why was that size on the drawing? Well, that's because that's what came out of engineering, because that's what was measured on site. Okay, well, where was the issue then? Is that this the correct site dimension? Well, no, actually the GC moved the wall after we took site dimensions. Ah, so here's what, you can back charge the GC now for that, because you went took site dimensions and then they moved the wall and now your cabinet doesn't. Guess what? At least you can get some money back for the issue. Might have to build the cabinet again, but you can at least can back charge the GC for that. So, I mean, asking why 5 times can help you drive down to the root cause. And then you can decide, what do I need to do to change this so that it doesn't happen again?
My mind is reeling in so many different directions.
Sorry, Dom, I didn't want to do that to
you. No, yeah, you did. That's exactly what you wanted to do. No, I was thinking back to a previous class, because we've been running this foreman training for a couple of years now. It's leadership training. What it is leadership training for your supervisor. It doesn't matter if they're an assembly sub-lead or the foreman or the owner who's working in doesn't matter. We all need leadership training. I take leadership training. You take, it's a constant process.
Constant honing it. Yeah.
Right. So, but I remember one of the shops that we did this for in the past, they had multiple steps building a pallet, which is not, none of us, well, there might be some of us here who's in the business of building pallets. But if we're building a specialized pallet to move some furniture, the steps that they were taking was ludicrous. And so I wanted to share something for people right now that they could hang up this episode and walk out onto their floor and make the change. And the change is super simple. And I'm amazed that nobody's doing it, but you can require that everybody in your shop wear an apron. And in that apron is a pencil and a box knife and a tape measure. And how many steps, Rick, would that save for people borrowing a tape measure, not having a box cutting knife? Just all of these ridiculous little things.
Yeah, don't have a pencil, don't have a tape measure, don't have a box cutter, and I got to walk and find it. And, we're just wasting time. And yet you're going to get paid for it. So that the employee is covered because they're going to get the paycheck. But we haven't advanced the project the right way, in an efficient way, optimize the flow, however you want to call it, so that we can get that lead time from 6 weeks down to 6, 4, and 2, because it's doable. I know of a cabinet company that I worked with years ago that they had a lead time of 4 to 6 weeks, and we got it down to 2 weeks.
Right, because you had the intent. Again, there's the word intent.
Intent was there to do it, improve the processes, to do the turnaround. And the added benefit to that, of course, is if you can decrease your lead time, you're buying material and your suppliers want to get paid within 30 days. So if I'm turning around in 2 weeks, I can bill the customer quicker and get paid quicker by the customer, so I can pay the bill and I don't have this big, huge cash flow problem where all my money's tied up in either materials, work in progress, and I have to get an extra draw or line of credit from the bank. I mean, it just compounds things.
Yeah. You know what I wish we could do, Rick? If I could wave a magic wand, I would make the appliance industry go through this, because I know one of the big holdups for people right now is proper dimensions on appliances and, waiting on appliances. But those are things we have to also build into the process. Regardless of those exterior issues, we've got to fix ourselves inside so we can do it.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been doing a lot of studying lately because the AWI put out the cost of doing business survey. And by the way, not everybody's in the United States, but and I think you can order it no matter where you are. But if you go to awinet.org, you can just order the cost of doing business survey. Actually, I think if you become a member, it's free. Don't quote me on that. But contact AWI if you want the real numbers on how a cabinet shop or a wood shop runs. They surveyed their entire population and got the stats. And you know what reminded me of this when you talked about the roles? Who does what? Like, what does an estimator do? What does a CNC operator do? Well, they surveyed everybody to get that answer. And then they summarized it in this annual report. So when you're talking about making sure the right people are doing the right thing so that we don't have mistakes happening at the beginning of the process, there's places to find this information. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We already know the shape. We can negotiate the color, no problem. But the shape is the shape.
Mhm.
So don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just try to make it work for you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, we talk, really, what the leadership course is about in my mind. I look at it as alignment. It aligns the values of what the ownership, management is looking for in terms of 1, 3, and 5 years down the road.
Mm.
And if we can align the supervisors and the foremen to that at some level, then they're looking ahead to look at those 4 key areas of what everybody should be looking for in a facility, when they're working for a company, whether they're the floor sweep, an apprentice, a truck driver, installer, machine operator, owner, doesn't matter. There's 4 key areas. And there's one isn't more important than the other, but here's what they are.
Yeah.
Quality, safety, production. So hitting the production targets that we need to schedule things, and then keeping costs down. Those are the 4 key areas that everybody needs to be understanding at their level. Whether I'm a worker, whether I'm a supervisor or foreman, whether I'm an owner, it doesn't matter. Quality, safety, production, and keeping costs down. And that's really what the foreman course kind of encapsulates.
Right.
To give folks some additional tools if they don't already know how to attack those 4 things or think about them. It gives them some additional tools in their tool belt that they can use to then look at those things and then help create alignment to the company, to the owner. What's your 1-year plan? What's your 3-year plan? What's your 5-year plan?
Yeah.
Right. Are we going to get there?
That's my sweet spot right there. Where does the business owner want to get?
Yeah.
I've been really pleased to see that the community, and really we're talking more and more globally. We actually had somebody in South America on this call as well.
Cool.
The shops are all over the world, right, Rick?
Yeah.
But I've been pleased to see over the years how we've been getting more and more companies willing to invest in training their supervisors, their leads, their foremen, whatever you're going to call it. And then the owner taking part in it as well to show that, hey, listen, we take running this business seriously. And we're the kind of company that cares about leadership. So we talk about leadership. Just the same as if you're the kind of company that starts to measure things, like you talked about earlier. We measure steps. Why? Because we care about steps. And then your people start to care about steps. But if we as leaders don't show our team what the expectations are, then they get to make it up themselves or do what they think is best. And in some cases, let's be honest, they don't think about it at all until we shine a light on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you measure gets attention, and what gets attention tends to improve. And if you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time. Right?
Yeah. That's sad but true. I just went hunting and I missed a shot this year. I've never missed a shot. My dad was there as backup, so we were okay.
I think there was a hockey player that said once, I think it was Wayne Gretzky, said you'll miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Right. So at least if you took a shot and you missed, that's one thing. You'll get better. Hopefully, get it next time.
And you know what, Rick, you're right. I mean, you looked at one 15 or 16-minute video from one shop from one part of their operations. That was the opportunity we saw just in that. So let's say that somebody went out there and totally botched it. They tried to improve that one process. What was our number here? 460. You figured it would be a 460. I know I rounded that number down, by the way. I saw your face. You weren't happy that I knocked $3,000 off.
Yeah, it's $3,680 off. So, it buys a good steak dinner for the whole company and dinner and,
Christmas party. I know. Sorry. I was trying to do it for the podcast, but listen, if you go and you totally botch changing that process of reducing the number of steps in a 16-minute segment of work time at one station from 60, and all you get is, I don't know, a savings of $10,000. Hey, that's your daughter's braces, man.
$10,000 you saved, right?
It's 10, but it's 10 grand that comes out of your pocket as the owner. It doesn't come out of anybody else's. Right. And so when we go back to intent, you and I talk about intent a lot because our intent is to is to show others how to improve. That's our clear intent. But if your intent is to go find that money so that you can provide for your family, the money's laying in the business. You just got to go pick it up.
It's there. And it's so, yeah, the opportunities are there. They're huge, you know, and I've worked with companies not very long, but I remember one in particular, they had done some lean initiatives and they had done, you know, some changeovers in their plant. And I came in and said, and the foreman told me right off the bat, he says, we're as lean as we can get. There's nothing you can do to tell us to get any better. We've done it all. I said, okay. I didn't stay there very long. I mean, I took a couple of notes. I passed it on to the ownership, but you know, it's a culture thing, right? Obviously, if the culture doesn't have the intent to improve, then there's not much you can do with that. You know, you leave them alone. That's fine, because again, we talk about culture building and improving the culture too in the leadership foreman training course. So there's opportunities galore. It's just, if you have an open mind, are you receptive to it, to try things?
Yeah.
You've got to try things. You've got to practice them. And yeah, if you don't make 100% improvement, that's fine. If you don't make 50%, that's fine. If you only make a portion of that, you're still getting a sliver of the pie as an improvement, you know?
Yeah. To underscore that point that you raised, on this hunting trip, it's a long drive to get there. And so I downloaded an audiobook from Audible, The Toyota Way. It's 17 hours. It's a long book. But they were talking a lot about the Japanese masters from Toyota who understand the Toyota manufacturing method, which really comes down to just eliminate wastes. And somebody asked from a factory, said, are we world class? And they were asking this Japanese specialist. Rick, you're already smiling. Maybe you've heard this. So I'm going to paraphrase it.
Yeah.
But he goes, the instructor said, I don't know if you're world class because I wasn't here yesterday. And the point is that continuous improvement is a living organism. It's continuous. It's not a point in time. It's being the kind of company that cares about or thinks about continuous improvement. Being a person of faith means that you think about faith all the time. Being a person who's healthy and fit means you think about, and Rick, I know you do marathons, right? It means that you're the kind of person who thinks about fitness and eating right and exercising right and stretching, etc. That's all we're talking about here, is taking those habits that we have in other places in our life and applying them to business.
Yeah, 2 points to that. One relates back to the Toyota, you know, the senseis there and the guys who really are practicing lean. And, you know, I remember somebody asked one of the lean senseis with Toyota, said, you know, how, you know, are you quite far on your journey where you want to be? And the guy said, we're only 10% where we want to be. Toyota. These guys are practicing lean every day. They're coming up with the cutting edge stuff, and they're only 10% of where they want to be. So they're very humble about, you know, the progress they're making. Right. So yeah, that's kind of
and that's the attitude, though. That's the attitude of being a student and saying, I don't think I have all the answers, but I'm curious to find them out. Instead of saying, I know everything. Like, this is where it started. You did a tour and you talked to some shop leader and he said, yeah, we got it all figured out. We don't need you. Okay, well, if you're closed to it, you're closed.
Apparently this shop was 90% or 95% where they wanted to be. So, you know, it's pretty hard to kind of open their minds to accept anything new, right? And when they're that way, but that's okay. Maybe they'll come to the realization later on that, you know, they're bidding on jobs and they keep losing to those bids to their competition.
Yeah.
And they keep saying, well, you know, that competition, they won't be around much longer. They're going to go broke because obviously, you know, they're not making any money. And then a year or two down the road, there's this competition still winning the jobs and they're still in business. So guess what? Scratch your head and say, maybe they know something we don't.
That we don't know. Yeah.
They're not out of business yet. So they're making money, but they're outbidding us. They're underbidding us.
Yeah. Those are questions I love dealing with when I do the strategic planning, because there's a couple of ways we could suss that out. Thinking back, though, I remember when you and I first put this course together years ago, the culture or the buy-in was where we saw the resistance in the shops. And so that's why we said right from the beginning that you can have up to 3 people in your company in the course, because, and actually, let me backtrack it. That's why we said for the information call, you have to come to the information call. The owner's got to be there, and whoever you think is going to be in the course has to be there. and then you go away, and as a company or as a group, you decide whether you want to join. Because our job is just to, I want to say sell it, but you're not really selling an education course. Your company has to want to take the class. And if all that you and I do, Rick, is get them on board and start the conversation.
What's the classic question? What's in it for me? If I do this, what's in it for me? Well, here's what's in it for you. Your job's going to be easier. We don't want you to work harder. We want you to learn some things and practice them and apply them. And then your job will become easier over time, right? Because now you have these tools at your disposal.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of cutting a miter by hand, which you can do, you can have a miter box and hand saw every miter on the job site for casings. Or do you buy a miter saw? And as soon as you buy a miter saw, it becomes a lot quicker and easier and maybe more accurate, right? So, the value has to be there, obviously. And this is a lot like buying a membership into a gym, right? Where you have a gym membership where you're going to go work out.
Yeah.
I mean, you can buy a gym membership, but if you never go to the gym, you're not, nothing's going to change.
No,
right? So you have to apply something. You have to do some work. You have to have the intent.
Yeah. Let's start to wrap up here, Rick.
Okay.
We have now run the course a couple times. You and I talked at the time that we're talking right now, it's November, early November.
Yeah.
You and I are toying with the idea of having that January, February course again, right?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. So we'll probably have an information call then sometime in January. If anybody listening wants to be on the information call, and that actually we just talked about it a second ago. The information call is specifically so you who's listening to this show, the owner of a wood shop, cabinet shop, architecture, millwork, furniture making, log homes, doesn't matter. If you think you want your team involved in leadership training, they got to be on this information call. The information call is free. You just text me and say Foreman 101. My cell phone number is 604-837-8361. And all that does is get you on the list to be invited to the information call. From there, you make all the decisions you need to on your side. But then Rick and I will host that call. When you're on that call as the leader, you can sit back and watch the reactions of your current supervisor, your current foreman, your current sub-assembly lead, and see if they think this can be put in place. And if you get buy-in, you guys can then make the decision to join or not join. And that's fine either way. Did you want to add anything there, Rick?
No, I think you covered it all, Dom. I mean, obviously we've got a limit of 6 companies per session, right? So
right. Yeah.
That's the other key thing, maybe to, the first 6 companies that sign up, then get in, and then you would go on a waiting list beyond that. So that would be, and we have some waiting lists from some folks from the last one who scheduling wise, it didn't work out for them. So there's 2 or 3 companies that want to already get on the next one. We know that, right? So
yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, what that tells us, there's lots of momentum in the industry. There's lots of curiosity. People are starting to, look around. It's very difficult when you leave your house and you drive to the shop and then you drive home again. You think that's the world, right? Maybe you go out on an install or but when you start to listen to a show like this, you realize, hey, there's other cabinet shops dealing with the same question that we've been dealing with. Yeah. And so maybe we should start to ask. I like the fact that everybody gets to watch those videos or get a debrief of the videos in that class there. Yeah. Because you learn. I would learn from that almost more than seeing my own.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Rick, why don't I give it to you for closing thoughts before we wind down the episode?
Closing thoughts. Well, I think if you think about in terms of building the culture or improving the culture or taking the culture from where it is now, I'm not suggesting that it's not where you want it to be, but you can always raise the bar a little bit on the culture. You can always raise the bar on how well your company communicates internally, dialogue between the shop and the front end engineering staff. I mean, I see this quite often. Go out to the shop and, what happened here? Oh, the engineering gave us the wrong information. So it's engineering's fault. You go to engineering and they'll say, well, the shop just didn't do it as per the drawing. And I say, guys, you're the same organization. There isn't us versus them. It's not us versus them. It's like you're one company. Learn to communicate, work out these issues. It's not bad that you have the issues. You have to address them. You have to say, how do we get better?
Yeah.
How do we prevent them from? So again, communication is key in this course that we talk about communication to yourself, to others, to your peers, to your customers, all these things. So it's important. Communication is so key and so vital. How clear are your communications? Do you ask yes and no questions? Do you know how to do this? Yes. You walk away, you come back, and it's done wrong. Instead of saying, okay, how are you going to do it? You tell me how you're going to do it. And then you get a better indication of, is the person competent? Do they understand? Then you can answer questions. So again, it's about communicating properly. And the other big one is, we talk about continuous improvement or lean, and some folks don't like to call it lean. That's fine. Call it continuous improvement. But what does it really mean? If you don't know what it means, my definition, and I didn't make this up, I borrowed this from somebody else, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Continuous improvement means reducing or eliminating waste. So every step adds value for the customer. That's really what we're talking about. And we have two kinds of customers. We've got the external customer, the end user who's paying for the project. We understand that one. But there are internal customers. So if I'm engineering and I complete a set of drawings, and these are production drawings, now, Dom, you're the first one to get it out on the shop floor, and you're actually going to do the cutting, you're my customer. And if I'm not delivering something to you that is of the quality that it needs to be, then I would expect you to tell me in a respectful manner, you need to do this and you need to change.
That's building quality into the process.
Yeah, that's building quality. And so we then have internal customers in a facility that we also need to listen to and deliver the right product to them in a timely fashion.
Rick, you're just causing yourself more work, because now I'm just going to keep having you back on the show.
Well, give me a few weeks break and then call me back, okay?
All right. Hey, Ric Ptak, thank you so much. And congratulations on running another great, two courses. We ran the Australia course and the North American course. But thank you for doing that. Thank you for what you're doing for everybody in the community.
You're welcome, Don.
Have a great day.
I enjoy it. So have a passion for it. So
I can tell.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Rick.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well. Thank you, Mr. Ric Ptak, for being a guest on the show again. Rick has been a guest on our show many, many times. So many takeaways from this, and the takeaways that came from you who decided to enroll in the class. As you heard, Rick and I are noodling with the idea of having another Foreman 101 training in January or February. Probably do the information call in January to give people time, and then we'll start the class in February, which we've done in the past, and usually we've had a really good turnout for that. So if you're interested, shoot me a note. One of the interesting things that, I wrote down a lot of stuff from Rick, as I'm sure you did as well. The 4 key areas that a foreman is responsible for on the floor. Now, if you haven't told this to your foreman, or if you are the foreman, how are you going to do it? How are you going to bring this to life? A poster's one thing, but having a conversation with your foreman, or maybe asking your foreman or your supervisor to listen to this episode, is another great idea, right? Because you can use this podcast and many other episodes as a training tool to help you get your team focused on running this more like an efficient business. And look, the more efficient we are, the more effective we are at running our business, the more value we can add to our customers, the more we can meet our promises. How many of us have been stuck with being late on delivery or being pushed back? And I know I made the joke or the observation about appliances. That seems to be the hot topic right now, but sure, that's an issue. But where can we take care of the things that we can control? Anyways, here's the 4 areas that Rick outlined. As a foreman, as a supervisor, as a leader, here's your 4 main concerns: quality, safety, production, and reducing costs. Okay, now I understand that comes on top of all of the other things, because we got to get the McElhaney job out, we got to get the Chan job out, and we've got to get the new building that's going up downtown. We got to get that lobby built. I understand those are all happening at the same time, and so none of this is instant. All of this is a constant, ongoing walk forward. Every day, take another step forward. And look, I wasn't kidding. How many shops do I work with, and how many shops have I spoken to that haven't taken the minor steps in putting efficiency in place, just requiring their guys, their men and women on their crew, to wear an apron and carry on their person a pencil, a tape measure, and a box cutting knife. And maybe you've got some other tools that you're saying, hey, Dom, you forgot this, you forgot that, you forgot this. Sure, I forgot it. Add it to your list. Go talk to your team today. Provide them with aprons or tell them look, if you want a job in my shop as a cabinet maker, you should show up with your own favorite type of pencil, sharpened the way you love it. You should have your own tape measure in both metric and imperial, and you should have a box cutting knife that does this, this, and that. It's not hard. The hard part is us going back to that level and making sure people have that. And why do we want a box cutting knife with everybody? So they don't have to walk 10 steps to somebody else to borrow one. They don't look around going, I don't have a knife to cut this with. Maybe I'll just use my keys or something crazy. I don't know what they're going to do. We just have to have the right tools. Each step costs you money. And you being you listening to, if you're listening to the show, that's who I'm talking to. That step, that extra one boot in front of the other and then walking back again, that's money out of your pocket. My job here as the host of this podcast and in having Cabinet Maker Profit System, as well as the other shows that I host, is helping business owners understand that they're in the business of construction. They're not just a contractor with a crew. You're a business person who just happens to run a cabinet shop. You're a business person who just happens to run X, Y, Z. Okay. So keep that in mind. Anyways, thank you very much for checking in. There's the summary points. Please leave feedback or a review for the show. If you got value out of Rick and myself today, if you continue to see value, let the world know. Somehow leave a review wherever you choose to do that. We really appreciate it. All right. Next is coming the section called Storytime with Dom or Questions and Answers with Dom. I hope you love it. By the way, if you didn't get the phone number, if you are interested in the information session, which we're going to run in January, I'm just looking at my notes here, send a text message to me. My cell phone number is 604-837-8361. And then just give me the keyword foreman, and then I'll know to put you on the wait list to be invited to that call sometime in January. All right, let's get to questions and answers with Dom, and we'll see you there. Hi, I'm reading this question on behalf of Trey, who runs a cabinet shop in Utah. He left a question for us on the Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, it's called Contractor Strategy Group. It's a free group. Although you do have to be an owner to get in, you have to answer a couple questions. So if you're not a member of that, please join. But Trey left a question in there, and he actually got some great answers back. Here's his question. Does anyone have an employee handbook for SOPs, that means standard operating procedures, that I could take a peek at? So a whole bunch of answers came into him on the Facebook group, and I'm going to answer some things that didn't get answered here on the show. Thanks, Trey. Hi there. Welcome to Questions and Answers with Dom. We're answering a question that Trey posed in the Facebook group about employee handbook SOPs, and there were some great answers in there, but I wanted to answer the things that weren't dealt with, the things that you won't find if you Google employee handbook or SOP. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedure. It's one of the simple systems that you try to put in place in your business so that everybody follows it. The first part is having those simple systems. The second part is getting people to follow it. We'll deal with that in other episodes. But here's the things that you might not think about, and the things I want to add to the conversation that was already in the Contractor Strategy Group. Number one, if you're going to build SOPs, standard operating procedures, or checklists, or ways to train the people in your company, keep everything on a shared drive. Now, it doesn't matter to me whether you use Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive. I like Google Drive because I can access it anywhere. It's the same of all the others. I just have all of my stuff on Google Drive. The reason I want you to keep that on a shared drive is because if it's on your hard drive, nobody else can access it. If you happen to be traveling to a meeting, nobody else can download it. And it's impossible to delegate if everything's on your hard drive. So keep all of your SOPs on a shared drive. That's number one. Number two, when you're creating an employee handbook, when you're creating the onboarding for a new employee, start with your company values. Now, some of you are rolling your eyes saying, oh, come on, Rubino, values? What are you talking about? Lucky Charms and marshmallow candy canes? No, values, your values, what you stand for, what you and your company stand for is the glue that holds together everything else in the business. All right. So if you have a company that stands for being super competitive, people need to know that so that they're super competitive. If you have a service first mentality as a human and as your business, then they need to know it's a service first mentality. If you don't tell me what the culture of the company is, I'm going to create my own. And that is creating problems for some of you out there, right? So what does your company stand for? By the way, shameless plug, absolutely crazy over the top. That's what we talk about in the book, my book called Construction Millionaire Secrets. In chapter 4, construction millionaires train everybody the same. And I learned this time and again in boardrooms, in construction trailers, on job sites, at muster stations, all over the place in construction, that the best construction companies train every single person the same. It doesn't matter what level they're coming into the company, they have to be trained the same. And it even came true to me, when I was a kid and I was working at a restaurant, I worked at this, decent steakhouse. Before I could be a waiter at the steakhouse, I had to do shifts in the dish pit before I could be a waiter, because they wanted you to understand the whole process of taking care of a customer really ends with that meal coming back to the back. And unless you were good in the dish pit, you couldn't become a waiter. And by the way, becoming a waiter was great because you got tips. And then, at Starbucks, you still have to spend some time at the counter understanding how to take care of customers, because that's what Starbucks does. So are you training everybody the same in your company? And are you starting that with a discussion or a reminder of what you stand for? If it's difficult to figure out what you stand for, please keep listening to the show or reach out to me. Happy to help with that. But you got to tell people what you stand for. As my ranching friends would always say, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And so if you don't drive the culture in your business, somebody else on your team will. And like I said, that might already be causing some of you problems right now. Number 3 for an employee handbook or SOP is keep it simple. When you have a system or a process or an SOP, you got to keep it simple. Boil it down to 4 or 5 key points. Let me give you an example. How we bake a cake. Now, I'm pretty sure nobody that's listening to this show has a cake baking company or a bakery or a coffee shop, but let me use this as an example, and then I'll do one that's more relevant for us. But how you bake a cake, I boiled it down to 7 steps. And by the way, I don't even know how to bake a cake other than this. These are just the 7 steps. I'll bet you could make it 5 steps if you needed to. So 4 or 5 points. Here we go. Here's how to bake a cake. Number 1, check the calendar for cake flavor of the day. 2, pull cake mix from shelf. 3, arrange ingredients. 4, follow instructions on box. 5, bake the cake. 6, cut cake using pattern below. 7, arrange on tray and put on display. That's how we bake a cake at a company that bakes cakes for a living. All right. Well, let's do something that's a little more relevant to those of us in construction and trades. And I'm going to assume that you have a forklift. And if you don't worry. You can see what I'm saying here. How we do weekly maintenance on a forklift. So this particular SOP, standard operating procedure, is for our forklift operator. And he or she has to complete it from 7 till 7:10 every single day. Number 1, get the checklist from the foreman's bench. 2, follow checklist and complete. 3, any failed items, lock out forklift and report to foreman immediately. 4, for an all clear checklist, complete report and return to foreman. 5, begin pick orders. There you go. It's that simple. When you create an SOP, a standard operating procedure, the hard part is keeping it simple. And that's our job as owners. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed that little overview there. Trey, thank you so much for that question. I think it's a great one. And folks, I hope you got a lot of value from the answer. If you want to leave a question for me, please do so. Go to speakpipe.com/askdom and leave your question there. Now, you may have noticed this end of the episode piece changed, because it used to be story time with Dom, where I told real stories about real people and real situations, what we were really doing about it. But I've told 300 of those stories now. And so now we're doing this where we're getting questions from you, the audience, and I look forward to hearing yours so that we can answer it as well. And then you can tell your family, hey, look, I was on a podcast. All right, folks, thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you soon.